Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm proud to welcome you to Living Theurgy. And I have with me the esteemed theurgist, Apollonius. I have Brandy Williams, and I have Clio Ajana. And first we'll catch up with each other, and we'll go counterclockwise on my screen today. Apollonius, you've had many adventures and you've ranged far and wide. Can you give us a synopsis of what you've been doing?
Yeah, so I mentioned a little earlier, last summer I spent some time in Naples visiting a lot of the archaeological sites, Pompeii and Herculaneum, and the Phlegraean fields, supposed entrance to the underworld, according to Virgil. Visited Virgil's tomb and a lot of other places in Naples. Fascinating place. Um, and I also had a trip to Dublin. So I did a bit of travel, and I was at Mystic South in Atlanta in July, and did a couple lectures there, Neoplatonic Theurgy and ancient Greece dice divination. And that brings me actually to, because it's been a while since I met with you all. Pythagorean Pentagram Press has published two books, so I'll try and show them here. This one, the title is the Oracles of Homer and the Bones. And what that means is it's two authentic ancient divination systems, the Homer Oracle and the Astragalus or Hucklebone oracles. And so it's translations of them with interpretive guides and so forth, plus some additional background information. So these are again, ancient divination systems that you can use um, quite well. I think they work quite well, and this kind of complements my book that Llewellyn published, The Oracles of Apollo, which teaches the alphabet oracle and the oracle of the seven sages. So this has been something I translated it a while ago, but I finally put it together in a book and finished it up. And then mostly after my travel, I put together another project. This is Hypatia's lecture notes reconstructed.
Oh, wow.
Now, as I make very clear in the preface and in the explanation on the back, nobody has discovered ancient manuscripts with Hypatia's lecture notes on it or anything else written by her. But we have good reasons. Well, we were told she taught the philosophy of Plato and Plotinus. We also have no record of her making radical changes to those philosophies. So she kind of, as far as we know, taught textbook Platonism or Neoplatonism. And we do have three textbooks, basically, from the ancient world that would have been available to her. One on Plato, one on Plotinus, and one on Iamblichus, their philosophies. So basically that's what I did, is I pulled together translations of those three books with some additional biographical information and so forth, and put together what reasonably could have been a textbook that, like many of us, if we're teaching a course for the first time, what do? Well, we look for a good textbook and kind of teach out of the textbook. And so, plausibly Hypatia could have been doing that from these textbooks. So anyway, it's a way to get a concrete idea of what she might have actually been teaching in her classroom around the end of the 4th century. So anyway, it's sort of an introduction to the whole sweep of ancient Platonism, including Neoplatonism and Theurgy. If you want sort of a summary taught as it would have been taught in the ancient world. So I was very pleased with that, to get those two books out. And I'm kind of anxious to do something else now, but I haven't decided what. So, but those are both out in hardback, paperback, and ebook formats.
I would like to devote episodes to both of those books, and we can start with the divination one.
Okay.
So let's talk, and let's do a show to let people know about it.
Great. Be happy to.
Brandy, you're next on my counterclockwise rotation. How have you been doing?
I've been doing okay. I don't get out much. But I did actually finally publish this. I talked about it last time, and I think you guys weren't here. A Magical Journey to India finally came out, Nemosini Press,
Yep,
and you can find it on Amazon in
got a
ebook.
copy.
Oh, did you? That
Yeah.
must be the copy that sold. Yeah. No, I don't expect it to be a bestseller, but I'm really glad that I actually did the work. I finished it. And it's really exciting to finally have it out and to be able to say, look, Apollonius, I too have your book. You are amazingly prolific. It's just astonishing. I continue to write. And that's pretty much it. I'm not doing any appearances or traveling just now. But I do write every day.
Awesome. And we have a project maybe in the works. Any update on that project?
Uh, which project?
An interview.
Oh, Witchcraft and Theurgy.
Yes.
Yes. Where'd it go? Oh, I'm not prepared for that. Oh, here it is. Aha. I went to I'm actually going to talk to Frater. I don't know how to say his name. I think
Lot of
here you
us.
Barabbas, yeah. Sacramental Theurgy for Witches. I said, well, I have to interview him for Witchcraft and Theurgy. This is going to be fantastic. So we're having a pre-interview discussion on Sunday, and then I'm going to do the scheduling. I'm really excited.
I'm
I
excited.
like his work, love his work.
Fantastic. And I would like to do an episode on your book as well. So let us talk.
Sure.
Thank you very much. And Clio, what is new and exciting? You're a traveler and you also write. Anything new on those horizons?
Um, for the travel, I'm trying to remember the last time I was even here. I know it had to be because Brandy said something and I immediately went to get the Kindle. I know. For those of you who are like, the dreaded Amazon. However, it is a good way for our people to get what we're doing. Um, I've done a lot of stuff for my day job, traveling and putting things together with that. So I don't have anything that is on the esoteric side, which is sad, that is there. But I hope by this time next year to be holding up another book, and I look at Apollonius holding up not one but two books, and you overachiever you. Um, so I look at that and think my basic things have
I'm
been,
retired. I'm retired.
oh, well, I never think of you as retired, but okay. Um, my time over this summer has been primarily going to conferences. So and I went to probably three, and in between just health up and down. This is the summer of take care when you go to a conference because you might pick up something or people around you might pick up something. But it was so nice to be out and to get ideas from individuals. So was also at Mystic South. I did presentations for Journey of a Death Midwife. I think I also did something. I did also something on the preparation for a start on Cronehood, which actually was particularly of interest since there were some individuals who were there. It was a smaller group, but it was a very lively and active group where we want to reclaim the term crone, because it is such a negative tone, and looking at it etymologically, it's still negative, and yet sage is not. And so we're looking at the origins of that and why, um, what effect it has upon just this general movement to reclaim crone as a positive, not a negative impression. So that's my next thing up after our fellow group project. And my hope is that we're going to have either a La Nina or El Nino winter, whichever one brings a lot of snow. I'll be very happy because if there's a lot of snow, then I have a reason to cocoon inside and commune with the gods. And I know you wanted us to start off with ancestors, which is funny because that's been on my mind a lot, especially with the recent deaths that have been there of various individuals, some celebrities, but some it's like, oh yeah, get you a reminder. Oh, sorry, I'm distracted by the cat.
It's okay. I have cats too, so I get distracted by cats, and we have puppies, so I get distracted by them as well. Thank you very much, Cleo. I'll start off with a very quick preface. I've been doing ancestor work for years, even before I knew what ancestor work was. And I've always found it very fruitful to look at the past, look at people in my past, look at things I've experienced, look at stories, or to replace stories that I've heard about the past and so forth. But over the past few years, it's been increased. First, I was getting like visitations from Hades and Cerberus. And Cerberus, just to describe Cerberus to me, how he's appeared to me, is my three greatest fears, whatever they happen to be at that particular time, all at once. So I learned to identify that as, okay, I'm feeling all this fear, which is atypical of me. But so anyway, that was a signal. And then Hades would always say things that you couldn't disprove, but they were very disturbing to think about. Like one thing, and he would talk in Greek, Ola anikun ston adi. That means everything ultimately belongs to Hades. So I would think about that, and it's true, it's like, what do we actually own? We kind of borrow things or do things while we're here. So again, there are truths like these that I would get. Then Shelley Kerr, she's known as the past life lady. I've had her on the show a number of times. She wrote a book on ancestor work. So I decided to do the entire book, to do every single exercise, which is kind of atypical of me. I'll usually do this and that, but I won't do the whole book. But I did the whole book, and what it did was it smashed a lot of things I believed true about myself. I always thought my apple fell very far from a familiar tree. But after doing all that ancestor work, it was like, no, it didn't fall far at all. It kind of just dropped there, and it's at the roots of the same tree. So that was liberating too. And anyway, those are some of my experiences with ancestor work in recently. And I'd love to hear about yours. And we'll start with Apollonius again.
Well, I'm probably not the best one to start with, because I actually have not done much ancestor work. I do include in my prayers every day prayers to Hades and Persephone, because I think it's important to to keep them, well, to pray to them, to acknowledge acknowledge them. But I haven't worked much with my own ancestors, I'm afraid. And I mean, I have done, sometimes solemn ceremonies, or more sort of Wiccan flavor. But not so much regularly. I have, I do sometimes work with heroes, which I guess would be included in ancestor worship, even though they're not my direct ancestors. They're my spiritual ancestors. I would think of them that way. And for me, the heroes are mostly ones with some sort of philosophical or theurgical kind of aspect to them. So Pythagoras, for example, Plato even, Iamblichus, Hypatia. These are the sorts of ancestors that I would make offerings for and pray to for guidance or help or just for thanks. And so that's I do that on an irregular basis, I would say, when I'm maybe working on a project that's related to one of them, or I just feel it's appropriate to do it. I have not really tried doing any sort of deep work with my own ancestors, however, and it's not something. I guess I haven't felt a need for it, but so I don't know. I don't know that I can say much more about it than that.
They're your
Yeah.
cultural ancestors and your spiritual ancestors. So they're ancestors in a very real way. So
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I certainly I honor and respect and thank my actual biological ancestors, uh, but I just haven't really felt much of a need to work with them after death. And I wonder. I think really, I mean, in that sense, I think I'm a little bit like the ancient Greeks, that, they might make offerings at the grave of their ancestors, but they wouldn't pray to them typically, I don't think. They might pray for them, but not pray to them. You might be more likely to pray to a hero, as uh, an Oedipus or a Hercules or whoever, Theseus, for example. Um, so yeah, um, I think all I really can think of to say. So, but maybe some other thoughts will occur to me after I hear from the rest of you.
Thank you very much. And as always, you offer a lot more than you think. And you're a thinker, so Brandy, how about you?
Yeah, and I just want to say to Apollonius that you were just talking to us about doing this work with Hypatia, and you have brought her back to us. You have
Mhm.
brought Python back to us. So you have this great work where you were bringing the ancestors in our spiritual line to us, and I am deeply grateful to you for it. So I think you do more ancestor work than you think.
I have felt very connected with them when I was working with them. I mean, I really did feel a very, very deep connection.
Yeah, there you go. And I don't know, we've been meeting for 6 or 7 years now, and I don't know if we've covered this topic before. It seems like we might have, but I went and looked up work that I did right around when I wrote For the Love of the Gods, which is about the spiritual ancestors in this lineage, the Neoplatonic lineage. And I found I found an essay that I wrote about ancestors right at that time at 2016. And I also wrote a blog post, When Your Ancestors Are Racist. I was very fired up after the election in 2016, as many of us were, right? So I kind of I did this like deep thought about who my ancestors actually are. I feel estranged from my family, estranged from my personal family. I'm the first witch in my family. They would not like me being a witch. Only my brother knows. None of the other people in my family ever knew what about my spiritual path or that I wrote books, right? So there's this sense of disconnection from my family. Um, and I'm okay with that. Actually, I want to be what I said in this essay is that I want to be the first anti-racist person in my lineage, right? That's the ancestor I want to be. You look back and you go, okay, well that's who she stood for, right? So there's that sense that there is the people who came before us in our family lineage, and then who we are, passing that forward in time.
Hmm.
And then also there's, as Apollonius pointed out, there's a sense that there's physical ancestors, our biological ancestors, but also our spiritual ancestors. And I kind of, well, looking at it, we all have a common ancestor. There's a common woman ancestor and a common male ancestor. So all humans are our ancestors, and we are the ancestors of all the humans who come after us. So that makes it kind of broad, but also it sort of takes out some of the tribalism and nationalism and racism in the whole concept, which can get really fiery in some places and in the pagan community too. Um, so what I did was I wrote this little prayer for the book for the love of the gods, and I've recently added to it. I call on those who have come before me, ancestors of my body and spirit. I walk in the world, the link between the future and the past. As I walk through this journey, my ancestors grant me the support that ancestors can give. And I've added this. I offer you remembrance and reverence of the gods. And I've encountered these cultural streams, cultural ideas that you not only you have ancestors give you things, right? They guide you, they are wishing you well. And then also there are cultural streams where you can also give that back to the ancestors. So just now engaged in a observance called Mahalaya, which is this sort of Hindu season where you do rituals every day, and the rituals are to the ancestors, and it goes both ways. You get a blessing, and you also are giving a blessing to your ancestors. So they're the ancestors who died with unfulfilled desires, the ancestors who were disabled and were not able to have the life that they wanted to live. And so you're giving those blessings back. And it's kind of a different cultural idea. We have this linear time thing in the West where, the things happened and you can't change what happened before. And there's this sense that in the stream of time, you can actually reach back. I find that in the Shinto tradition too. I have I know a Shinto priest who moved to Florida from Washington State because, as one does. But he has a ritual which purifies your ancestral stream backwards for 7 generations. And I think this is just a really fascinating idea. So it kind of, again, situates you in this place where you're not just like taking stuff or asking for stuff, but also giving stuff back. And that's kind of where my thoughts and practices are just now.
That is awesome. And again, you
Yeah.
gave away a lot more than uh, what you introduced. And before we get to Clio, I'm finding a lot of that to be true also. And I've explored, aside from my traditional Olympian, I guess I'll call it, rather than calling it Greek or Greco-Roman or Greco-Roman Egyptian, that I was drawn very much to the northern tradition, the Hyperborean, to the Sparian or the Western tradition, to the Afro-Caribbean tradition. I have Cuban relatives, and their strange Christianity was a part of my childhood. And I was Greek, so we had our own strange Christianity. So it wasn't the same as everybody else. So I just figured it was an ethnic Christianity. But then I found out that it was Santeria. So I studied that to find out more about it. And I got from Ancestry.com, not from Ancestry.com, but one of the ones that are like that, DNA profile, and then my Y chromosome profile. And it was interesting because a lot of things that are true of me, like even though I treasure the nationalistic or ethnic tradition that I was born into, I've always been more theosophical and universalist. And my genetic structure treats the Mediterranean like a lake. I'm like all over the place. And in addition to Greek, which I had a lot of, I also have a lot of Italic and Northern African DNA. And then the things that don't fit into the Mediterranean picture, because I've always liked other traditions. I found out that the journeys of my Y chromosomes encompass a lot of those traditions that I've been fascinated by and interested in, that had nothing to do with my core spirituality. So it's mind-boggling because again, it brings you to the place where you have to ask, am I living or am I being lived? And I've been there many times before. So anyway, Clio, how about you?
I love that on there. I was going to actually ask you first. You had mentioned early on about ancestor work, and I find it interesting that um Cerebus of the 3 fears, because it's like, yes, in fiction you think of one way, it's like, well, yes, and your happy fears are always with you. Um so I'll have to look back and listen later about who you mentioned. But I've always done stuff with ancestor work, and it's been a part of our tradition, not just mentioning and inviting the ancestors in, but also just having an awareness, having an ancestor altar. And I think part of it is because the sadness of how many ancestors of the blood who may or may not be with you. And I think there must be something about choosing, or when you're aware, rather than the choice, that you are a witch, and how many people in your family are not witches, or how many people would feel differently. So like you, Brandy, in my family, they sort of know who and what I am, but I think it's sort of like you're the weirdo because they found out right about the time they also found out that I came out. And so it's sort of like coming out of multiple closets at the same time. And there are family members who either don't know or don't want to know. So it just isn't there, because I come from a family of a lot of different types of ministers. And so it becomes a very interesting claim with ancestors. But I also have um, the seafaring relatives who love to drink and love to work hard and do things. And when you have ancestor work that brings up those relatives who, I'm not out on the sea. I love the sea, but I'm not out working as either as a longshoreman. I'm not actually catching the fish and stuff 6 days a week, but yet that's probably one of my fondest and closest ancestors. And as I go through, I'm finding work with more of them, not just on of the blood, but also general um, ancestors. And it's the nice thing is that it's never too late to start. I find that, and also it's never too late to have. I feel strength drawn from learning more about myself as I learn about the ancestors. And I would love Brandy to, you know, later on find out about the your friend, the Shinto priest, because I think the idea of blessings going backwards as a purifying to me is very intriguing. Especially at this season, we're coming up on the season where people traditionally will talk about ancestors, ancestor visits, and thinking, well, okay, but it's not just the once or twice a year that you really think of the visitations. I tend to get visitations around this time, and I have cherished them more in the past several years because I get guidance and wisdom and this in the strangest places. Um, and I find that to be as fulfilling a type of ancestor work as keeping the cup filled on the ancestor altar and bringing the food and things like that. And my only problem is running out of space. I don't know if anyone else has that issue. You run out of space. Although I cannot blame myself because I'm in a house and I've gone to places where people have had, because of various traditions, multiple ancestor altars. And then you got the issue of how do you manage to keep all the things together? So, when you talk about ancestor worship, that is an aspect that has always intrigued me of how can you, if you're doing it, it becomes a separate worship type in and of itself, because there's so much detail that can happen with it and so much that you can do. And it becomes a great deal. I remember asking my friend how she managed. She was like, well, this altar is for rattles off for one tradition, this altar in a different room because they don't want to be near each other, ancestor altar for another tradition. And I think as you grow in your religious observance, you find a comfort and a balance. So for example, I've listened to all three of you, and I've drawn something from each of you. And yes, Apollonius, that includes you, even though you said you didn't have that much to offer. You always have something to offer.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So I would say, and I'm looking to see if I forgot your other, do they have to be personal? I don't think the answer should have to be your personal family, but I do think as someone who is not adopted, I can only speak for people I know who have been adopted, where that search that's there, I think it might be easier if you don't have personal family, or if you didn't get along with your personal family, that you actually are like, well, yes, you're looking at who exemplifies are what you are craving, what you are needing, and also those values and those skills that you have as a human on this side. And also because even though we're a very young country, one of my ancestors actually served in the Civil War. And so one of the things we do as a family is going back and finding people. I don't think it's by accident that we've got the whole genealogy trend. I mean, now it's 23andMe, but I mean, for probably at least a good 30 years, I can think of people looking at that. We all want to know where we came from, or that at least the people from whom we are descended in some way, or people who influenced the people who birthed us, are not robbers and crooks, but they are honorable people who exemplify certain values. And that to me is one of the blessings of ancestor worship, because you get those ideas that maybe no one else is getting through to you, but they are in dreams. Or for me, it's sometimes on the road, which can get kind of crowded, when it's just you in the car and everybody else who's not living, but they're there. Um, that is, you know, and I think one of your questions, Brandy, was about chosen ancestor who inspires you. I had a bones reading with a practitioner, and one of the ancestors who came through very prominently. I've had this happen twice. One is my grandmother, who very diehard Christian woman who also liked she liked her old granddad. Um, as a drink. And but when I first came into paganism, my very first ritual, which of course was a nice Samhain ritual with Isis and Aphrodite, and she showed up. And so ever since then, I was hooked with like, okay, your ancestors can show up for these things. And what I didn't know is that not everyone has that wonderful blessing and appearance, but she has shown up 2 or 3 times when I really have needed guidance and didn't know that I needed guidance. So I got a tarot reading at a local metaphysical store, and she just kind of started talking through the cards. I'm like, okay. It was a little scary at first. I'm like, okay, when your ancestors need you to listen, they will find a way to come through, so you will listen to them. And then the most recent time has been when with the bones were cast for bone casting, and my great grandfather, whom I barely would have met, but I wouldn't have remembered because I was literally a baby, and then he died. Um, one of those, you're 96 and you leave your girlfriend's house at whatever time it is to go to the grocery store, and well, actually, to go get to the actual alcohol store, and you slip and fall. But I mean, at 96, if you gotta go, you gotta go. And but his spirit, I work with his spirit a lot. And so, yeah.
Well, thank you. That was very profound, and it brought up a lot of things that I've been thinking about. I've been working with the dead for my family, well, throughout my life, but now a lot. And I guess because I'm in my late 60s, and what do you call it? The death is no longer very far away. I've lived more than half my lifetime already, and I have what's ahead of me. And a lot of what the dead have been doing with me, and I'm grateful for it, is showing me events of my life beyond my own interpretation, to see the point of view of the other person involved. So whatever resentments I grew up with, concerning my family, they're revealed to me not through the eyes and mind of the child that I was, but the adult that I am. And as an adult, what happened is not what I thought happened when I was a child or a teenager or a young adult, or, it was actually very different. And I've learned in life that, everybody pretty much does the best that they can at any given moment with who they are and what they know, and, and things like that. So I give people a lot more slack. And so I'm giving my ancestors slack, and they're enlightening me in terms of what actually happened. I don't need to get stuck in the stories. And I'm also saying that the stories that I got stuck in were their stories. I grew up with these stories, and they defined reality. And that's why I defined them this way. So I don't know if it makes sense, but I'm able to like try to stop feeding into the stories, because I'm not very close to a lot of my family. I'm the distant person. I don't go to family events or things like that. Not that I hold anything against them, I just don't go. And so it's very liberating, and I'm more and more at peace as I go through this process. So ancestor work is very important.
Hercules, is this more of a cleansing type of thing? Like you say that you had the memories from before were their memories, and now is it sort of you're getting these back again to sort of say, okay, they're being updated as a way of preparing you by sweeping away what's no longer needed in terms of your
Maybe.
memory?
It's just that I had a certain impression as to what happened, and by seeing it from the other side, I see that my impression was my impression, but my impression was faulty.
Mm.
Yeah, because I couldn't have known at that age. I made the best explanation that I possibly could, and that's what I was reacting to my own explanation rather to what was actually going on. And once I saw what was going on, my explanation was built by a child or a teenager, or whatever. So I could kind of just let go of those resentments, because those resentments run very deep with families. And I've always been the odd person in my family, as you couldn't tell. And also beyond the experiences and the other perspective, it's the way I interpreted what was happening are the ways that they told stories about what was happening.
Hmm.
As I grew older, I saw that even people who didn't know me and my family, they hadn't interacted with me in years, I became part of these same stories. So in some stories, I've become the good guy. In some stories, I've become the bad guy. And so in some stories, I'm the odd one. And I haven't interacted with them, so they have nothing to base these conclusions that they came to beyond the stories that they heard and the way that they interpret reality. So it's kind of like just letting go and I guess forgiving it, but not in a Christian sense. Just basically, okay, I understand that now. I don't need to hold on to this. It happened, but it wasn't what I thought, or there was more to it than I believed. So that's what I'm getting from my ancestor work recently a lot. And again, I didn't fall far from the tree, even though I thought I fell miles away from the tree. Nope, didn't. And that was very humbling.
Is that a common type of lesson that you think, no matter how estranged you are um, from your family, that we're all connected still?
Yeah, I feel that we're all connected. And again, since the DNA results came back, even the things that I sought on my own were connected, and I didn't know they were connected. And that my Y chromosome tells this story because it ran through all of those people. So all those people, rather than not being connected to me, become connected to me. And that becomes, again, am I living or am I being lived? Am I part of some process? And it feels that way sometimes. Like we're here, our life is all about digesting information and processing it.
Mhm.
So I kind of wonder that, but I don't know. Not that I'm wise, but I understand what Socrates was saying. It's like, I don't know. Just we make guesses, we have ideas, we weave the ideas into patterns, and we expound upon them. But ultimately and eventually, I don't know. But it's interesting and it's fun, and it's left me freer and lighter. So I'm happy it's happening. Does anyone have anyone that want to add to Ancestors? Now, I want to return to Ancestors in a later show because this touched upon so many different areas that we could devote entire shows to. But would anybody like to add something, or should we move on to the next question?
I just wanted to, oh,
uh,
sorry, go ahead.
I just want to
Apollonius.
briefly mention the cliche you've probably all heard that, as we get older, we discover that if we're men, we're turning into our fathers, and if we're women, we're turning into our mothers, and that's a humbling experience, even if you have, if you hold your parents in some high respect, it's still a humbling experience. Like, I thought I was going to be completely different.
Mhm.
For me, one of my aunts gave me this great gift. My mother was not a good person, and she said, you look just like your mother, but you are nothing like her. And that was so freeing and lovely. So I wanted to, the brief story I wanted to tell is about my mom do-over. My partner Ted, his mother sort of adopted me, and she was like the mother I should have had. She's just lovely. And I have a literal ancestor altar. I'm settling her estate. I've got a storage unit, I've got a shelf, and I've got her picture and her husband and their ashes. Like, well, we leave things behind too, and somebody has to deal with that stuff. So that's my word on ancestor worship.
We have an altar like that with my aunt's ashes and one of her favorite pictures. And I'm Greek, Clio, so every
Yeah.
single inch of my house is an altar to something or someone. And my
Actually,
altars tend not to move around that much, but my wife's she moves things around, and so there's a constant story unfolding. And sometimes I'm not even aware of what story we're currently living in. But and our walls now become altars too. So
well, that's actually
I'm saying.
that brings up a couple of thoughts I'm thinking of. First is, I love the quote you just had, are we living or are we being lived? And I think of I'm gonna really brutalize this art. Um, People know of it as the Swedish death cleaning. And so there's been a lot of books on it and things like that. And I remember going over it years ago. In fact, I did a column on it in spiritual decluttering, which is on that. But the stagning, and I apologize for anybody because I brutalized it, but the idea of not just cleaning and moving away things that are unnecessary, but when you started in life. And so you'll have books where the one of the more famous ones, the woman I think is like in her 80s, but she says, oh, this practice in Sweden starts as you are getting closer to retirement, and it's more of a good practice. If you think about it, you don't want someone else having to deal with your stuff, so you deal with it while you're able, and you start this as a way, almost like when you were talking about Hercules. You have this different way of looking at things, and I see that with the house. I live in what I consider to be a shrine. And I figure some part of me must be Greek because I have gotten things from the historians on both sides of the family. My parents were both the historians of the family. And so lots of things that are there, and people who have passed on, they never came back to get their stuff. And you realize you are the keeper and repository for so many traditions and things that you're like, well, yes, I want to make sure this gets passed on. And you don't know who to pass it on to. And then you realize maybe it doesn't have to be to someone who's biological. Maybe you are the conduit to pass on to people, period. And so you end up having the phase where you are passing things on. And as I had a friend tell me, you don't want to think of aging, because when people start talking about these things like, oh, you're getting old, and old has such a negative effect in this society. It is not as revered as it should be. And every time I go to a different country, my best memories of traveling to China were how much ordinary accepted reverence there was for those who were in, the young people are in their 70s. And you have people who can, whip your butt as they race by you on the Great Wall of China. And you find out, oh yeah, they're approaching 90, but that's perfectly fine. That is a very humbling way of looking at what we are supposed to do as we get older. And I like to think we have examples from our ancestors. I know I have a lot of ancestors who have been in the ministry in some way, and different types. And the greatest gift I've gotten from ancestors has been, regardless of what you label it and how you call it, it is still something you do and part of who you are. And I would love to continue exploring the gifts that ancestors bring and give, sometimes not as a gift, but as a reminder, like, okay, you might want to get on it, with time. And the death cleaning is one of those things. I've been on and off with it since 2017, and now I'm back on with it again because I sort of feel not an urgency for death, but there's a time where you just stop considering certain things, and that's the blessings of our ancestors. For those who have been around people who are literally going to die or in the process of dying, there's a part where they start transitioning and they just don't, they care, but they're caring about things that don't have to do with you. And that's hard to take as a human on this side of the fence. So that kind of boundary, I would love to explore that more. And when I see other countries, like with the Tibetans this summer, they're very matter of fact, practical about it. There are things that they will do and won't do, and just, okay, that we don't talk, because we don't talk about it, like this type of conversation. We don't talk about the ancestors and the gifts and what we give back, or what we learn from that, unless and except if you're actually at a funeral, then you start talking about people. But to me, it's like, that's too late. Okay, it's never quite too late, but you know what I mean.
That practice, my wife and I have been talking about it recently, and we have lots of stuff. We had a store, and that stuff is here too. And so what I started doing is I started creating programs. Like, I give away health books. I'm involved with health in my community, so I give away a book a week. And if I'm at a street thing, an event, I'll give away. You just take a book, and this way, other people who are watching what they're eating or looking for forms of exercise can take this. I no longer need it. It's just taking up space and dust. My son wants first dibs on my Greco-Roman stuff, so got that as I pour through it. I have hosts who are really heavily into Egypt. So I love studying about Egypt, but I don't need shelves full of books on Egypt. So I've been offering to the host and mailing it to them. And then if I have stuff that I'm interested in, they've been mailing it to me. So if you guys want to be part of this informal book exchange program, just let me know and I'll let you know what is seeking a home. And if you want it, I'll mail it to you. So
Yeah, I would love to. We have a food pantry at the college where I work, and the nice thing about it is open to anyone because they don't card you. They don't say, "Oh, are you this, that, and the other?" Nope. They just you come in, you can take the food out in a discreet white plastic bag, and it's food, it's toiletries, household items. I've dropped off sets of dishes and things I just didn't need. When you have 12 sets of dishes, you don't need 12 sets of dishes. I'm no longer in the
that's
age of having,
12%.
well, I mean, for the time that I was actively practicing as an Orthodox Jew, yeah, that's 8 sets of dishes. I don't need to have all the sets of dishes, milk and meat in the world. I just need one, maybe two, um, because we don't necessarily have as many formal meals. Um, but unless you're going to be a nice decorating type of person and say, yeah, I'll just invite the neighbors over, and that is an idea.
And we're gonna have to wrap up because we have enough time for people to say their contact information and everyone's really busy, but I'm sorry for cutting you off. And we'll
No,
start.
no, no. We're going to have this conversation more, right?
Yes, we are. We're definitely gonna have this conversation more. So Cleo, why don't
Yes.
you share how people can contact you if you have anything new and exciting and how people can experience your world more directly?
Well, thank you for listening, guys. The fastest way to contact me is through Facebook. I am under Clio Ajana, CLIO AJANA. You can also reach me um, through the actual, I guess, link or whatever it is on the Wild Hunt. I lead off the month the first Saturday. Generally, first full Saturday of the month is when I have my post, and you can click on that and shoot me an email. You can personal message me on Facebook as well. And yeah, that's about it. My hope is that a lot of this stuff will come together so that my fascinating fangirl approach will be to get to either Brandy's or Apollonius's multiple books that I can then show up and flash, like tassels.
You have insights and experiences that are invaluable. So everyone here always contributes a lot more than they think. So thank you very much, Cleo, for being here, for sharing your insights. Brandy, how can people find you and order your books?
So brandywilliamsauthor.com, Brandy Williams Author on Instagram and Facebook. I don't post there too much. I have a Patheos blog, Star and Snake, and I post there more often. And just go to Amazon and say Brandy Williams, and the name of the book. It's better than the name of the press. Mnemosyne starts with an M, the Muse of Memory. But you can find my books there.
Thank you very much, Brandy. And again, just like it was Brandy's idea to introduce you, Cleo, this conversation was Brandy's idea. I
Mhm.
did Llewellyn to interview her about For the Love of the Gods. And then we got
Oh,
in a
yeah.
conversation and she was talking about some Theurgy convention that was no longer happening. And why don't we do that on the air? And it's like, I think that's a great idea. Let's do it. And so Brandy's been our muse and our guide throughout this entire journey, and I can't thank you enough, Brandy.
But it's you. You have done it faithfully every month since then. It's got to be at least 6 or 7 years. It's amazing.
I think it's 7, nearly 8 at this point, because For the Love of the Gods had just come out.
Yeah, 2016. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. And Apollonius, I was a fan of your websites long before I met you.
Well, thank you. So, yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is through either of two websites, opsopaeus.com, that's OPSOPAUS.com, which has descriptions of my books and links to their pages on Amazon and those old writings you were reading, Hercules, and then also wisdomofhypatia.com, and Wisdom of Hypatia is all one word. And I'm on Facebook as John Opsopaeus.
thank you very much, Apollonius. You're incredibly awesome, and
you.
when you just have something to introduce, it's always more than most people would accomplish in 3 times the time that you've accomplished it in. Um, I've been working on a concept, and now again, I'm nearing the winter of my years, I guess we'll call it. And so I want to try to make it happen. It's an ATHENAEUM. So it's going to be the podcast that we have. I'm going to polish them up a bit and focus them a little bit better. So that, because we've been doing this for a long time. So now let's evolve it to the next level. And I'm aiming for 2 podcasts a day. Right now I'm doing usually 1 a day, sometimes as many as 3, but I want to aim for 2. And then we're starting classes. And as part of the classes, I started off with the Cave of the Centaur, which is about Olympian shamanism and the heroic path. And I've been teaching this on and off since, God, I was a teenager. So I'm about ready to do it again. And then the Cave of the Enchantress, where we explore, starting with Circe and totemic shamanism, the different types of Greek magic. And what I'd like to do is it's a 101 type of class. I'm going to give people things to read if they want to explore it more, but it'll be a 101 type of class with the practice and things like that, where they can sample something that won't be too difficult to master, and then we move on to the next thing. So I've run this a number of times also. Then the rest is with the planets and the zodiac signs. And anyway, I'm not ready to do that fully yet. But I would like the subjects I'm covering to lead to things that you're doing.
Oh,
So with Apollonius, for instance, divination, who am I going to go to but Apollonius? For Apollonius, philosophy, who am I going to go to about Platonic and Plotinus and Iamblichus, philosophy? And his websites are the Alexandrian Library reborn online. So I'm gonna, and again, it's going to be just opening a door and starting them off with some really great resources that are free, and then recommending a couple of books for them to read if they want to pursue it. And I was inspired by I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Arbitel of Magic.
Mhm.
I don't like the Arbitel of Magic, but I don't like I like some parts of its message, but not the way they portray the Olympic spirits and the Greek gods. But they gave you, like, it starts off with the Theurgy, the explanation, and then they have all these courses that they listed that we have no record of ever having happened, or but still it was very well thought out and very well put together. I'm not sticking to it 100%, but I'm going to use it as a template for the ATHENAEUM. And then part of the ATHENAEUM is going to be to resume doing things in libraries and schools and so forth. So I don't know if I can pull all that off, but I'm certainly going to give it my best and try. So you're all invited to play. Let me know how you feel you fit into it, and how you'd like me to refer people to you if they're interested, and let's do that.
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much for everything, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely.
And now to find the right button.